day. I lost my life, my son lost his life, and the people responsible are ultimately going to lose their life too, because this is a situation that could have been handled completely different. Once you have your children, you don't imagine you have to bury them. A mother is not supposed to bury their child ever.
10 months after Ethan's murder, arrests were made in the case. Damian, who was by then 15, his mother, Tina McKeever Hauschultz, 35, and Timothy Hauschultz, 48, were all charged on February 6, 2019. Damian was charged with first-degree reckless homicide, 3 counts each felony child abuse and felony substantial battery, and was held at Sheboygan County Juvenile Detention Center with a bond set at $150,000. Timothy admitted to assigning the discipline that eventually led to Ethan's death, and he was charged with felony murder as a party to a crime, 2 counts of intentionally contributing to the delinquency of a child resulting in death as a party to a crime, 2 counts of physical abuse of a child causing bodily harm as a party to a crime, and misdemeanor battery as a party to a crime. His bond was set at $100,000. Tina McKeever Hauschultz was charged with 2 counts of intentionally contributing to the delinquency of a child resulting in death as a party to a crime, and 2 counts of child abuse/failure to prevent bodily harm as a party to a crime. Her bond was $75,000. Following Ethan's death, many wanted answers as to why the Hauschultz siblings were placed in the permanent care of a man who was once told by a judge that he had no business fathering children. A spokesman for the State Department of Health Services told Herald Times reporter journalist Doug Schneider that even if an individual is charged with child abuse, caseworkers cannot take that into account if they're ultimately convicted of a lesser crime. He also said that the fact that Ethan and Timothy were related may have helped offset his violent criminal history and stint in prison. There just weren't enough viable options for placement available to not roll the dice. The County Health Services Department was presented 14 written questions from the Herald Times reporter, 7 of whose answers were, quote, Manitowac County cannot comment on a specific case. One of those questions pertained to how often individuals convicted of child abuse were allowed to have children placed in their home, to which they responded they didn't have the statistics available to answer, which means they weren't even attempting to keep track. 3 months after the arrest, Tina McKeever Hauschultz's attorneys requested a competency exam, and she was ruled incompetent to stand trial in July 2019. The judge had her placed in an inpatient facility for treatment. 15-year-old Damian was charged as an adult automatically per state law, which requires all cases of murder involving kids 10 to 16 to begin in adult court. A reverse waiver was requested by the defense in this case, but it was denied in January 2020. The court determined that Damian had not met the criteria to have his case transferred to juvenile court, and doing so would diminish the severity of his actions. February 2020 saw Timothy Hauschultz's attorneys requesting a change of venue, citing, quote, extensive and inflammatory local media coverage as an obstacle to a fair trial. The publicity from this case is extremely prejudicial. It portrays Mr. Hauschultz as a felon and a child abuser. It portrays him in the worst possible light. The defense also alleged that Manitowac police continued searching the Hauschultz home after Timothy revoked consent, claiming they took the shovel, swabs of blood, clothing, and pieces of wood into evidence after he was no longer on the property. He'd given police permission to search the premises and home only while he was present. The only promising thing to happen since Ethan's murder is that a bill, dubbed Ethan's Law, has been presented by Senator Andre Jacques. It already has bipartisan support throughout the legislature and is expected to be introduced in the next session. Ethan's Law will strive to keep children from being placed with individuals who have had a child abuse charge reduced or who have pled guilty to a lesser charge in a child abuse-related case.
He was placed with somebody who should not have been entrusted with his care. I mean, there were red flags all over the place. In Ethan's case, it's just beyond horrific. We need to put those safeguards, those guardrails in place. It basically precludes placement with a non-parent who has a history of child abuse and these violent offenses. It basically says that you can't just say, well, gee, we only have so many options. Let's just stick them with, a family member that, we have concerns with, but maybe it'll work out because we feel like we're under pressure to make a placement. The people who are in charge of placements at the county level, I think, are very accepting of putting this restriction in place because it's going to make it very clear as opposed to leaving a gray area where they then have to justify one way or the other why they did or didn't make what could be a very at-risk placement.
There is also an Ethan's Law in Connecticut, which passed in 2019, named in honor of Ethan Song, who accidentally shot himself while at a friend's house. No charges were brought against the gun's owner, local private investigator Daniel Markle, whose father was former New Haven, Connecticut State's Attorney Arnold Markle. He gained notoriety for trying cases tied to the Black Panther organization back in the 70s. The gun was kept in the master bedroom closet inside a cardboard box that was covered with clothing inside a large plastic tote. There were actually 3 guns in the box and all had working trigger locks, but the keys and bullets were kept in close proximity. Under Connecticut state law, criminally negligent storage of a firearm can only be charged and prosecuted if they can prove who loaded the gun. In this case, they couldn't prove that Daniel Markle had put the guns away loaded. It was eventually determined that the 2 teens had gotten the guns out on multiple occasions, unbeknownst to the owner. Ethan and Shane were the only 2 people in Shane's home when Ethan was accidentally shot in the head with a .357 Magnum on January 31st, 2018. Although the gun owner wasn't charged, his son Shane was, with second-degree manslaughter and first-degree reckless endangerment, which they charged based on the fact that he admitted that they had taken the gun out on multiple occasions before this incident. His case was kept in juvenile court. Ethan's parents said, quote, "We had heard that was coming down and we had felt that a 14-year-old child shouldn't really be responsible for what happens with guns in their house. That's the role of the adult in the house. It's heartbreaking to us. We loved this child. He spent a lot of time in our home and we don't place the blame on him. We place the blame squarely on his father." In June of 2019, Ethan Song's parents settled a wrongful death lawsuit they had filed against Daniel Markle and his PI firm for $1 million. They had accused him of not properly storing or keeping loaded guns in his home when he should have known that the kids had access. They alleged that he failed to teach his child gun safety or inform the parents of kids who came to his home that he had unsecured weapons inside. Ethan's mother told the New Haven Register, quote, "We sued Mr. Markle because we have always felt that Ethan's death lies at his feet. He would not stand up and take responsibility for his actions and instead threw his child under the bus. We want to send a message to gun owners that they need to take personal responsibility for their deadly weapons. They are the only ones who brought the guns into the home and they should pay the ultimate price, not the children. Access to guns accounts for a majority of suicide in children and accidental shootings. 8 children a day lose their life because the gun owners did not secure their weapon." Kristen and Michael Song have become gun safety proponents, campaigning hard to have legislation in Connecticut passed designed to keep kids safe. The new measure requires gun owners to store firearms in a securely locked container if there are minors in the home likely to gain access without the owner's knowledge.
And we began to talk about what we could do to help keep kids safe. And it seemed that gun storage and the way guns were stored was leading to a lot of real tragic things in our country, in our state, school shootings. We see accidental deaths like Ethan's and even teen suicide. So we felt this one issue might crystallize a lot of support because it's really all about keeping those guns secure. It's not about taking guns away from anyone. It's just saying if these guns are secured, kids are much less likely to have that impulsive moment where they take them out and maybe do something that ends up shattering a community, which is really what I feel happened with Ethan. And some people do a fantastic job of securing their guns. We feel, a lot of our friends are gun owners, we feel totally safe having our kids at their homes. It's when guns are unsecured that the dangerous things can happen.
Right.
So, and those parents are even interested in asking their friends who have guns. So it really has started a lot of good dialogue. I think it's healthy. I mean, we went years and years and nobody asked us that question.
Right.
One last note about the Ethan Hauschultz murder case. All three are still awaiting trial, and I'll let you know what happens in the future. One interesting recent development is that on April 13th, 2020, bail was posted on Damian's $100,000 bond, and he was released from custody to await his next court hearing at home. It wasn't reported who bailed him out. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode, but until then, take care of yourselves out there, and don't be scared.